With what elements on a development lease, or what elements are important rather on a development lease to facilitate financing? Let's talk about financing. How difficult is that to get for a public-private partnership? What advice do you have for folks?
Well, I think Austin mentioned it earlier as far as... Is that mic on? Sorry about that. Austin mentioned it earlier. When you talk about lease property, obviously when we look at a deal, we're looking at 5 different C's of credit. And so obviously credit history, and we're looking at the capacity, income, we're looking at the capital that they're putting into it. But certainly collateral is one of those elements that we're looking at. And when we look at that, if we're looking at a lease property, and Austin ran into this, where you've got a lease term that is shorter than the amortization schedule that we would typically go with, a bank is not going to extend that AM schedule beyond that lease term. That's just something that, from a risk perspective, and I think Austin's actually run into a situation where, with some of his lenders, that they'll actually go up to 65% of whatever the lease term is. And so a lot of the core projects that I've been around, you're seeing 20, 25, 30-year terms on. We started with 50 years here, and then we went back through DC to extend it to 100 years, partly because we were doing cabin projects, and from a financing perspective, when a bank looks at a term of 100 years, it's not technically fee simple, but we look at it almost that way. Same reason that at Keystone that we started with a 50-year lease. We're building a brand new facility, so the amount of capital that we're injecting and plowing into that deal allowed us to take the amortization out 25 years, and to do so, we needed a term beyond 25 years. So when we look at a deal, I'm going to say lease term is going to be as important as anything on a public-private partnership, such as this.
Scott Kirk, First Oklahoma Bank. I don't have a whole lot to add to what Dustin said. We work together. We generally do not want to see a lease under 50 years. Our term financing goes out 25 years, and it doesn't seem to make sense to do a marina deal that has the kind of capital investment that nice marinas have, and to have a short lease. It doesn't make sense. And so that's something that we've discussed and pretty much require to see at least 50 years.
That's a lot of investment on the line, so you want to see a longer lifespan with that lease, right?
That's right. That's right.
Well, and just to add to that, so in addition to my volunteer duties as Secretary of Commerce, I'm a banker alongside these guys at Regent, and we did some financing on the properties up here, and Scott and I have worked together for many years. So Dusty's got an unusual situation because he's been on both sides. I mean, he's been the developer and is now the banker. I don't know why he would come to the bank direction. That seems kind of a sad career move to me, but so the issue, I'm just kidding. So, and if you think about it, the issue is, in banking, your net margin is about 1%. And so you've basically got to always, as hard as it is, you got to look at the worst case scenario. And the other issue with the short lease term is if you end up for some reason getting the property back or it doesn't work, what's going to be the value when it's time for you to turn around and sell it to try to get your loan paid back? And if it's just got a tiny lease term remaining, you're probably in trouble. So it's a big issue.
Well, I'm glad we have a couple of bankers up here because I got some student loan stuff I need to.
I'd call First Oklahoma. Call First Oklahoma Bank.
I've got is it not it kind of deal? I'm not it. I got a girl at Oklahoma State right now costing me a fortune. But anyway, all right. So our next question: are there some incentives for lake development? Are there some incentives that help make this a little bit less risky or a little bit easier?
Well, from a banking perspective, in my opinion, and the reason that we got into this particular type of industry is the barrier to entry is high. We've talked about the situation with the Corps of Engineers, and Anytime you're working with the federal government, it can be challenging. And so as bankers, we look at several different factors. One of those, competition, one of those, barriers to entry. And we understand if we're putting up, or if we're financing a mini storage, for instance, on the corner here, somebody can go down the street and purchase this piece of property and put a mini storage in down there. When we go through the process with the Corps of Engineers to get approval to build a commercial marina on a core lake, the likelihood of another one going in the near future is pretty small. It's not to say it can't happen, but the Corps looks at demand closely. There's feasibility studies that are done. It's quite a process. And so from our perspective, I think that's why you have a lot of smart money running towards the marina industry, because that barrier to entry is so high. The returns are there, but also the barriers are there. So.
From an incentive perspective, and the senator knows this better than I do, most of Oklahoma's incentives are aligned around jobs and job creation, because we feel like that's the key to prosperity for the state. However, so I don't know that there's any true incentives for waterfront development, except in the case of kind of tourist destinations. And so we do have, and this is the man that passed it, so you could talk about it better than I can, but we do have some, I think, tremendous incentives when you are putting in what we've termed an entertainment district, a large development where we feel like 75% of the revenue could potentially come from outside of the state. It's multiple uses. It might be hospitality, retail, residential, and we've got there are tremendous sales tax rebates back to you for those types of projects, and we've got 3 or 4 of them going on right now that are very, very exciting within the state of Oklahoma. And so I would mention those as very good large commercial development incentives. But when it comes to, we have a quality jobs incentive, and so if jobs are created within your development that are above the state average, we have very nice incentives. In Oklahoma, we pitch. I've spent all morning upstairs listening to you all. We've got a very large oil and gas company that is considering making a move from Salt Lake City to Tulsa. And so 2 hours we've been going back and forth on negotiating and incentives. And I can tell you, our incentives are second to nobody. But when it comes to just pure real estate development, unfortunately, that's not where a lot of them are centered right now.
I think the one area, and maybe that's the purpose of the question, I'm not a CPA, but one of the benefits of building a new marina or purchasing one has to do with the depreciation schedule. And so you build an asset that's going to last you 30, 35 years. You can depreciate it over 10 years. Again, I'm not a CPA, but you get a lot of shelter there on your income, certainly up front. So
Accelerated depreciation.
Accelerated depreciation,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So.
I don't really have any comments about the incentives. Like Dustin, I'm not on the CPA side, so I do have a comment, though. I've been listening to all the panel speakers today, and I like personally what I'm hearing about the growth in tourism and the expansion of lake activity in Oklahoma. I'd like to say that a couple years ago, our board made a very conscious effort to expand into marina lending. And then just coincidentally along the way, we were able to hire a former operator manager, and it's really enhanced what we do. I'd like to make this point, though, is right now the opportunities that we're getting on a day in, day out basis for marina lending is not in Oklahoma, okay? We've spent a lot of time traveling to other states and looking at marinas and not really getting a chance to look at them so much here in Oklahoma. And I think I can speak for Dustin. We'd like to see that get better.
I had a question. You brought up the kind of a mini storage, because we're a lot of the discussion's been about really big, expensive, big investment projects. But what if there's a smaller business owner or a smaller entrepreneur that wants to do something like this? Do they have to jump through, you think, the same regulatory hoops to get that accomplished, or is it on scale
purchase a.
Well, not just a marina, but just if they want to open any business on Core land, if they want to make any type of arrangement. I don't know if I'm phrasing my question right, but what if somebody doesn't want to jump off that cliff and do a huge project, but maybe there's a small business owner that wants to, say, expand and open, I don't, it could be any number of things, but are the regulatory hurdles as difficult or as extreme, or is it kind of on scale with the...
That's a good question. I probably can't answer that as well as some that maybe have gone through that process. I think that anytime you are looking to do a project, small scale, I can. So Susan Erler's been dealing with that, a smaller scale project. Mm-hmm. It's on the Overlook, and the Overlook was built by the Corps of Engineers at the time the lake was constructed. The Corps didn't have the funding to continue to upgrade that facility, so it fell into disrepair. So we offered to go in with private money, make the investment, bring that facility back to honestly a safe standard. I would say Susan, when she wants to propose something new, like a pavilion, goes through some of the exact same hurdles that we do on a larger scale project. And so, and ours is for profit, hers is not for profit. Mm-hmm. And so yes, I think you face the exact same challenges, on a smaller scale. So I think that when you talk about some of the benefits, though, and I'm not sure exactly where that question was going to take us, but there are programs that our bank works with. When we look at doing financing on properties that are not in city limits, so they're not by major metropolitan locations, there are USDA loan options. So USDA is going to allow somebody to put less down, and they're going to be able to take out from an amortization perspective, instead of going 20 or 25, they're going out 30 on those. And so that improves their cash flow. It lowers the burden as far as the down payment goes. SBA is another way. So our bank does a ton of SBA and USDA lending. I think we're number 1 or number 2 with Bank First. So that's something that our bank is really trying to find niches that we're good at. So post offices, marinas, mobile home parks, things that maybe others aren't as experienced in, and we're trying to utilize our expertise to go source those projects out. So
I was kind of asking about the smaller business thing because I was hoping that 19-year-old of mine might open up an ice cream shop down the road here and make some money and
make
don't do it. I wouldn't do it on core land. Is the only thing I wouldn't put on core land.
FAFSA is hard enough to fill out. Like I need more paperwork, but. I think I got an amen back there, didn't I? I got a couple of amens back there. But all right, well, gentlemen, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here and your information.